My name is Matt Donato. I'm the Senior Associate Director for Alumni Career Services here in Alumni House. Thank you all for coming to our 2009 Interview Skills Workshop. This is somewhat of a unique event. We have some great alumni here who will serve as interviewers and interviewees, and I'll let them sort of explain what the format's going to be. But this is one of many opportunities you'll have to hopefully get some insight, improve your interviewing skills, especially if you're looking for a full-time job, if you're going to be applying for internships in the spring or the winter. This is a great way to start that preparation. And I'm going to quickly turn it over to my colleague Marta Druska from CAPS. We'll talk about a few programs that CAPS has that can also help you improve your interviewing skills.
I just want to talk really quickly about resources that CAPS has for you guys, especially around interviewing, since that's why you're all here today. So just save the date, January 16th and February 5th. There may be 2 mock interview days at CAPS if you want interview practice. We're going to be doing that, and all that information is on the CAPS website. Also, if you ever want to do one-on-one interview prep, we offer practice interviews Monday through Friday during the academic year. So if you have an interview coming out for an internship or a full-time position, you can come in and get practice. Really treat it as if it was a pre-job interview. Also want to remind you guys, first and second years, about the Alumni Board of Governors externship program, and also for all of the grads, the Alumni Cafe's internship program will be starting out really in just a couple of weeks, and then throughout winter quarter there'll be internships for some positive tension. But any questions about externships or internships, any kind of interviewing prep that you're looking for, please come into CAPS or give us a call.
Thanks, Marta. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Linda Liu. Linda is an alumna of the college, class of 91.
Yes.
I think?
Yes.
Sorry.
That makes me how old?
Linda works, she's a past member of our Alumni Board of Governors, past president of the Board of Governors.
Vice president.
And vice president. And she works at Allstate Corporation in Northbrook, Illinois. So take it away, Linda.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the interview workshop. We've got a very full program, and I want to kind of give you an outline of what we're going to try to accomplish this evening. I'm going to go through and introduce you all to the alums here, and then we're going to get started. All right. So let's do the introductions first. We have Vincent Choi. Vincent is a graduate of the college from 2006. He was a music major, and he is now a consultant at Chicago Partners. We have Carolyn Janace. Carolyn graduated from the college in 2003. She is currently at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, graduating next year, and she will be having a job as a consultant at Accenture. She was an anthropology major in the college. Kristen Mercado. Kristen graduated from the college in 2000. She graduated from the law school in 2004. She was a psych major in the college, and she is now the Midwest manager of lawyer development at the Sidley Austin Foundation. Eva Luban. Eva graduated from the college in 1996, concentrating in sociology. She also has got her master's in 2001. She is the regional director of the American Cancer Society. And finally, we have Beth Williams. Beth was a psych major of the college and graduated in 1972. She is currently the president of Edgewater Consulting, and part of what she does is consult on interviewing skills. As Matt indicated, I graduated in 1991. I was a public policy major, and I am now a senior attorney at Allstate Insurance, managing Allstate's class action litigation. So this is who we are. What I found really interesting is none of us were econ majors, and we all have jobs. So you can still get a job from graduating from the University of Chicago without having gone through econ. Although some of us still had to go through econ, and we didn't major in it. The format for this evening is going to be as follows. We would like to actually take you through mock interviews so you can actually see alums who have jobs go through an interview process, maybe see some things that you might think they could have done better. You might have some takeaways of things that you like that you may want to further develop on your own. The format's going to be, it's a fictitious company called Maroon Corp. There will be 3 applicants for a management trainee program that will have a rotational opportunity through finance, marketing, as well as foundational public interest work. Marine Corp is going to be based off of publicly available information from Kraft Foods. And the interviewers are going to be Beth and Eva. The interviewees are going to be Vincent, Kristen, and Carolyn. They are actually going to be, they're not interviewing, they're actually going to be sitting out there, so they can't hear the answers of the other candidates. With the interview process will be about 10 to 15 minutes each. You'll hear feedback. You'll hear us as interviewers discussing what we like, what we didn't like. You'll see all 3 interviews, and then you'll also see the actual deliberation process of how we decide who we're going to actually hire for the position. Okay, so the first one up is going to be Vincent. We may ask the other 2 candidates to please step out of the room. I will join with the interviewers. And walk through the door. Okay. Hi, Vincent. Hi, I'm Linda. Come on in. Have a seat.
Hi, I'm Vincent. Nice to meet you. Hi, I'm Vincent. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Great, welcome. So we're going to, why are you interested in Marine Corps?
I'm really interested in the range of products that you guys do, and I just read about you guys for a really long time. You're a multinational company, and I'm just really excited about the kind of culture you have and the people that I've met. They're all really interesting. And personally, I have done a lot of work in finance and marketing, and I've also had a lot of interest in public service, and it seemed like a really I haven't really found a lot of other jobs that are similar in that kind of focus, and I thought it was really unique with Marine Corps. And I've been doing economic consulting for the past 2 years, and I've been looking forward to progressing my skills further and expanding sort of my skill set.
One of the things that I'm interested in finding out about is, everyone has good and bad situations that they deal with. And sometimes despite everything that we do, no matter how hard we work on it, it just doesn't work out. Tell us about a time when you gave it your all and it just didn't work out, and what did you learn from that experience?
Well, when I was in college, I tried really hard to make a fundraiser, and with the fundraiser, I did a large game of musical chairs, and for 100 to 200 people, and it was during the Asian economic crisis, during the tsunami in the Indian Ocean, and there were lots of victims, and I really wanted to get people together, and it seemed perfect. Everybody wanted to help. There was lots of interest, and there were lots of people who wanted to do things. There were lots of institutional support from the university. And I thought I was running this organization, this student group, and I can bring people together. And people came, and it didn't work out. I kept pushing, and I delegated the tasks. This is how we cannot do things, and lots of people still came, and people don't show up, or it's hard to talk to people and motivate people, and I was less experienced with understanding the different incentives people had and how to get the right kind of incentive to show them how they can work together and make things happen.
So if you were able to do it again, what would you do different?
If I were able to do it again, I would spend more time learning what they're interested in, specifically with the task, because I assumed that since they wanted to do this, then I can just give them work and do it, which is very different from their perspective, as I found out afterwards. And so I'd find what each of them are specialized in, what they're interested in, and what they want to learn, and then give them that task, and then ask them to develop the portions individually.
How did you actually create your team? Did you have criteria? Were you just friends that you pulled together? Did you have a team to help you with this task?
That was definitely something that I would do better with. In the actual event, I solicited everybody who I thought was interested in. I talked to the different departments inside the university. I talked to the community service center and the student government, and found lots of different people who were interested. But since there were a wide range of people, there was nothing holding them together. And so I needed a common interest amongst all of them to pull them together so that they can work.
This was this is for the Tsunami Fund, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And you found that wasn't enough of a common interest?
It turned out not to be.
Really? Okay.
And so that was something that I could be more perceptive with, how to find out what the people wanted to do with their tasks and what they thought was worthwhile with their time that they were going to spend.
So if I were to call up one of your former supervisors or advisors, what would they say about you?
They would say that I'm very hardworking and that I try very hard with what I learn and what I don't know. And with the things that I don't know, I'm not too afraid of trying it out and getting better at it until I am as skilled as everybody else.
How do you get yourself prepared in something that you don't know initially?
Initially, I read up and online, or I go to a library. I ask around for books, and I see lists of books online. Something that's really exciting is always finding other people's reading lists and asking people what they're interested in reading, and reading a lot of magazine and newspaper articles also help me get up to date, especially with a lot of business issues. And also, if it's something that could be found in textbooks, that's also been really helpful, whether it's with marketing or statistics or finance, or like some really specific part of like how to assess put options in terms of or like swap options in terms of how somebody is trying to hedge the risks. And so something very esoteric, I can go and find out how to do it. And then afterwards, being a U of C alum is really helpful, that I can talk to a lot of other people who have done something similar and ask them how they did it, how they learned, what they did. For example, with the finance position that I'm really interested in this rotational program, since there is no finance program inside the U of C, I learned a lot about how to do finance with the textbooks, with reading Financial Times, with other places online about finance. And I actually found several alumni at Maroon Corp who is doing that kind of position, and spoke to them briefly about their experience, about how they learned how to do finance from the U of C. And similarly, I've asked somebody else who was in the marketing department, and also looked at how they did it and how they got to where they are.
Have you, it seems like you gain a lot of your knowledge from books and from literature and studying in that fashion. Have you ever encountered a situation where your knowledge from books or textbooks is different than what actually has occurred in real life?
I think that definitely is the case. For example, with marketing, it's very hard to apply textbook methods of marketing to real life. You can go through the different models they have, the Porter matrix, and all the other kinds of stuff that you can find in books, and you go to real life, and for example, in the events that I was talking about with the fundraiser, we're trying to advertise it and show people and get people to come, and it doesn't work. People are not incentivized. You can look at economic theory. It's like, this is cheap, this is free, this is why you should come, and then they don't come. They think there's not much value in it if it's cheap. And so that's something that I had to figure out afterwards, it doesn't work out. And then with this kind of experience, then I see that, well, theory is there, it's helpful, it describes things, and then you need to talk to people about what really happens to see how you can apply that, or maybe not at all, and think of something else.
So you've talked a little bit about what a supervisor would say, or would say as far as your strengths. How would you describe an opportunity that you a weakness?
A personal weakness of mine is staying organized and managing my time. It's very difficult for me to handle a lot of tasks and stay on top of things. And oftentimes I go back into my college habits of just staying up later and working later. But it's very not efficient, especially with my current job, where I bill my clients the same rates every hour. And it's not very fair to the client to bill over $100 per hour for the same amount of work. And I put myself in that situation, it's like I wouldn't really be happy about it. And so I try and think of how I can be more efficient with what I do, how I can structure my day so that I can do the different tasks, talk to different people, go to the meetings that I need to go to, and still be able to do what I set out to do and give myself deadlines. And it's a constant struggle for myself to remind myself that I have these deadlines, or to find out what these deadlines should be. And it's really helpful to have a mentor to check on with me every week or so, and just having the obligation to go to my mentor every week and saying, this is what I did this week, this is what I didn't do, and I have to be accountable for it. It's very intimidating at first. Or every week when I go into the meeting, it's very intimidating. But afterwards, because I have a really nice mentor, he's really patient, and it helps that I can talk more and grow slowly like that and get better with organizing my time.
So have you found that you've gotten better at organizing?
To be truthful, not very much. There's always more challenges afterwards. That's sort of like I have these set of tasks that I'm doing, and it's hard to do. I take a certain amount of time to do it. Okay, then I conquer them. I can figure it out. Then I move on to a more difficult set of tasks, and then I have the same problem again. And as time goes on, I constantly move to a more difficult set of tasks. And so I have to repeat the same problem over and over. And it's funny because today I was tutoring a 4th grader, and I was telling that person how to do algebra and showing them how to do things, and it's very easy to me of how to draw a line and how to write the equation of a line and what it looks like, and they're just struggling. They spend half an hour working on it, and they're like, how do you see this? What are these problems? How do you calculate fractions? And it's like, I was struggling at that point. The methods of working through that kind of problem was difficult. And then now the problem is more difficult. But the method for working through that problem that I have now is about as difficult as it is for the 4th grader. And so I think the difficulty with managing time and staying organized is always a challenge.
I'm going to ask this question to everybody because
Okay.
I like this question. What's your favorite TV show?
My favorite TV show is Simpsons. They've been around for a long
Reruns
time.
or the new episodes?
Reruns. I haven't actually seen the recent episodes. I've seen a lot of the old ones, and I haven't had too much time to watch as many TV shows recently, and so that's the one that I have the most judgment on in the past few years. And I'm sorry it has to be reruns.
And why?
I think it's really witty, and I've been watching it since like 10 years ago. Whenever it started, but it's always been engaging, and I find that today, like the issues they were solving are still engaging today. And why I found it funny, and it's also like it stops being funny at some point, and it becomes depressing that is actually real life out there. People experience those kind of problems. We have a danger of having 3-eyed fish that are radioactive or something. But it's very interesting, and the other thing that I really admire about it is because about 2 things. One is that it's very broadly applicable. Little kids enjoy it, and older people enjoy it. People who have been working for a long time, maybe at a power plant, can still enjoy the humor of Simpsons, and that's just really magical. That's they're able to create something that is so easily understandable by everybody. And then the other thing that I really like about it is that they come out, I think, like every day or every week, and it's just a remarkable amount of brain power that is put into it to create that kind of quality that I see in The Simpsons.
Do you relate with any particular character?
I hope not. I think they're all very, they have alarming personalities.
Just any other questions? No? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very enjoyable.
Well, it's very nice to meet all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you want to have to wait for a couple of minutes so we can debrief? Thanks. That's classic. that was classic about The Simpsons. I thought that was kind of I thought that was a question that should have been from left field, and I thought he was very sincere, and I thought he was very thoughtful, not only in that question but all those questions.
I like the way he pulled together when you asked him why he was interested in learning for. He was able to pull together all of the different aspects of the internship, the rotational assignment, and talk about what was interesting about each one of them. And he really kind of pulled it all together. I thought that was very clever.
Actually, I will admit that I thought at the very beginning, I thought his response was almost too perfect, like too rehearsed, too patented. But then when he actually started talking through examples, he started going into his little stories, then I thought remarkable how it seemed like he almost went off on a couple of minute tangent of a story, but then he just brought it back.
Exactly.
To
I noticed that.
That was
the position. Right. He'd go off a personal thing where you could actually see his personality come through. And he has an endearing.
He was also very candid about his weakness
to work on.
Actually, I feel more confident that he's giving us the truth because he was willing to share that. That was about some interviewers wouldn't necessarily feel positively, but I do because it gives me confidence that he's really being, his integrity is and he's actually working and if he's willing to work on it, I'm willing to work with him. That's half the battle.
Sometimes prioritizing and not kinds of little
might be better suited to a very specialized role where he doesn't have to do a lot of disparate things and would be able to focus more on one area.
I can see that. The trainee position that I think with that he that relationship, I think each position also have kind of mentor that he could really some skills. I think that actually, and it all is a and whether we're doing something that could be worked. Any other comments?
I like the fact that he had a sense of humor. Kind of helped break the tension a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether he's the best candidate for this particular situation, but we'll see when
Right.
The other thing I was going to mention is just about something, and he was a little, and I was, and that.
get to this job? Stop of knowing. Have a second candidate. Can you hear us okay in the back? Louder. Or the people in the back can sit in the front. There's couches, no seriously, there's couches, there's chairs. Yeah, because this, really, we're not going to bite. And you may, get to know us a little bit better because there are actual opportunities that may be available. Exactly. We're trying to do the pitch to get people to move up. Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, I'm Linda.
I'm Carolyn.
Hi, Carolyn. Come on in.
Hi, how are you? Eva. Carolyn, nice to meet you.
Carolyn, Beth Williams.
Hi, nice to meet you, Carolyn.
Welcome.
Thank you.
A little late.
Not a problem.
But we'll get started right away. Why are you interested in this internship, this management training program?
Sure. Well, I am very interested in getting into general management, particularly for a large corporate. Sure. Interested in getting into general management for a large corporation, looking at several other rotational programs, and this one actually fits my background quite well. I'm currently a full-time business school student at the University of Chicago, and my concentrations have really been in general functions. I am getting a finance concentration. And actually, I'd like the opportunity, in particular with this position, to do a rotation in your charitable arm. My experience prior to business school was in fundraising for a nonprofit. So it's a good fit for my background. And I think Maroon Court is a fantastic company, and one that I would like to get into right out of business school.
So, obviously you've been very successful so far in your career and in your schooling. Sometimes things don't work out despite our best efforts. We try and we pull all our resources together, and it still doesn't work out. Tell us about a time when, despite all your best efforts, things didn't work out, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I would look back to my work prior to business school. As I mentioned, I was in nonprofit development, and we had a biennial auction every other year, a very large event. And in 2004, it was actually my first auction with the organization. And I was in charge of what we call our auction central operations, which is all of the data, essentially, that flows through the evening, all of the bids that need to be processed, all of the items that get sold, that sort of thing. And I had been in another area of the event earlier in the evening. It's kind of a chaotic kind of a situation. And when I came back later in the evening to sort of get our auction central processes going, I found out that essentially all of our computer system was completely down, with the exception of one machine.
Right, that happens. Okay.
Exactly. It was a bit of a panic situation, absolutely chaos. We have to process a lot of information in a very short period of time, and we had to just deal with it, essentially. Like I said, we had one machine working, and so we were working as quickly as we could on that one machine, and we just basically had to let our guests know that processing would take a little longer than we had expected. We had some unforeseen technical difficulties, and just notify people, let them know that everything will be processed within a couple days after the event. And we did the best we could. And really, in the end, it was a bit of a panic when we found out that things were just completely in shambles. But it all worked out fine. The event raised over $1 million, and our guests were very happy and very understanding about the situation.
Did you, in that situation, what was your actual role at that fire drill?
Sure. My role was to say, okay, here's the situation, and this is how we're going to fix it. We had a whole plan set up for how that evening was going to go and how everything was going to be processed. You kind of have to scrap the plan and start from square one and say, we were going to do it this way, and now we're changing. This is how we're going to do it, and reassigning volunteers essentially, and then just making it work as best we could.
So were you in charge of redesigning the plan then?
Essentially, yes, because the operation was under my purview.
And what would you do differently if you had it to do, or have you done it
Yes,
since then, and have you done
we
anything
have.
differently?
We had a lot more robust testing of our systems prior to the event. In terms of the way we structured how the information was meant to flow, we made small changes from auction to auction. But in terms of making sure and feeling comfortable that our systems were going to be robust enough for the evening, we did a lot more testing prior to it. We actually had, for the 2 subsequent auctions that I helped run, we had 2 IT guys on site all evening with us, constantly testing the system, making sure we had enough computers running for our needs.
Did you have to face any type of sort of customer service issue with the people at the event? Did you have to do any sort of post-event marketing or press releases, anything dealing with that type of issue?
I wouldn't say it was that formalized, but certainly the evening of, people are expecting to, say, get their invoice for the evening, how much they need to pay for the items that they won. We just had to, handle it at our live auction while everyone was seated at dinner, explain the situation, how we were working through it, and when we would get them their completed invoice, and when items would be processed. It really wasn't an issue in terms of the after work, the post work. We ended up just coming in that whole weekend. The event was on a Saturday. We worked on Sunday to get things done so that by Monday morning, people were able to get their invoices, people were able to get their correct items, everything was entered in the system, and it was all running smoothly at that point. So we had to do a little bit of that kind of work, but it wasn't that formalized.
Having been in similar situations, I'm sure that there was at least one person who was a little ornery about the situation. How did you handle that?
Typically, it's an 800-person event. It's about 800 guests. And given the size, those kinds of issues we could usually handle on a case-by-case basis if necessary. We've dealt with issues at even the best of events has people who are maybe more difficult to deal with than others. We do handle them on a case-by-case basis and make sure that we're serving them appropriately. And just
Give us an example of one of those.
at a particular event like this, or in general?
No,
Something that you personally handled, right?
At an event like this?
Yeah.
At an event like this, lots of situations where people want to leave early. A lot of situations. Need to get home. The babysitter needs to leave. We want to leave now. Some we're able to handle on a case-by-case basis right then and there. It depends on how busy we are. Other than that, I mean, I do get involved in these would get involved in these kinds of conversations, and the conversation would just be, I'm sorry, we're not at that point yet to get you your items, get your invoice, check you out, and we understand you need to leave. Our office will contact you on Monday. Pretty obviously, very polite, but short, sweet, firm, and most people handle it relatively well.
Okay, standard question. What would you describe, or what would somebody describe as your best attribute and your worst attribute?
Best attribute, I think, a friend told me this recently, is that I am incredibly reliable, 120% reliable. And if I make a commitment, I stand by that. And I think that gives the people around me the ability to be completely secure in what I say I'll do. And I think in a working environment is a real asset to have, because when you're working in a team, if all the pieces aren't flowing the way they're meant to, it just makes everybody else's life that much more difficult. And so I think that is a key asset that I bring to any team. In terms of a weakness, I can sometimes be, and I have had people comment on this in the past in evaluations and that sort of thing. I can be sometimes overbearing if I feel that I'm right, and have a tendency to maybe steamroll someone else's opinions. If I really have a set idea in my mind, a clear idea of what I think is the right answer to something, or how I understand a particular situation or context. Like I said, I've gotten this feedback and evaluations in the past, and it's something I've definitely been working on, both at work prior to business school and in business school as well.
How do you work on it?
It's a process of being self-conscious, I suppose, about it. I've gotten good about hearing it in my own voice, and knowing when I'm getting a little bit too overbearing in a particular situation. I think it's also an issue of looking at the people around you as well, because a lot of times you'll get that feedback on someone's face or in their body language when you're being overbearing. And so just dialing it back. And it's just I think it's something that comes with some practice, like most things. And it's a question of being self-conscious. And I think once you have worked on it, you've worked on a lot of teams, which of course I have through business school and whatnot, you can change your demeanor with that kind of practice and how you interact with others in a team.
Final question. What's your favorite TV show?
My favorite TV show? I think right now, my fiance and I are sort of on an Entourage kick a little bit. I think it's very well written. I like the way they handle each of the different storylines. Obviously, the characters are really good. Jeremy Piven's character is based on a man that I sort of know a little bit, so that adds an interesting touch to it for me as well. Someone from my previous work. So we've been watching a lot of Entourage.
Okay, great. Well, we will let you know.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was nice meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care. Thanks so much.
That was different.
Thoughts?
It was a little bit more difficult to get her to talk specifics about specific examples.
Yep.
She kept talking in generalities and more broadly, and that made me a little uncomfortable.
Right. I think we had to ask her 4 times to try and give us a concrete example, and I think I completely agree with you. I don't know who she is. I think she would be very capable. I think she would definitely be able to do the job well, but I have no idea if I want to go out to lunch with her. And I'm going to be working with this person for 10 hours a day, possibly more. Do I want to hang out with her? I don't know. What are your thoughts, Eva?
Right, she was a little too rehearsed at first, like the first couple questions, and that's why I liked. I felt like in a way we were just tag teaming, just trying to break that down to get to the real sense, to get to her real personality. I think the last.
That's why I'm asking it. That's great.
And and kind of going back to her strengths and weaknesses. I think it's telling of what people say, how they answer that. The reliability, great. I like how she brought it back to, in general, my friend said this, brought it back to a team setting. I would love to have her to apply it back to this job,
That is true. She never talked about this job again except after the first question.
Right. And then the weakness with the whole overbearing thing, it's just...
When I put those two things together, when I put together the 100% reliable,
120%.
Promises,
Right.
and then on the other end of it, can be overbearing if she thinks she's right, suggests that there might be some rigidity there. And flexibility is really important in a team environment, especially if you're rotating from one function to another. You really have to be able to adapt and adjust, and I'm wondering if she would have any issues with that. I'd have to talk to her again, I think, about some of those.
Again, because I don't think we got a sense of who she actually is. I think she's very capable, certainly reliable. But we don't know anything about her that she wasn't ready to kind of sell us, I felt. No glimpse into the personality behind the sort of the selling pitch to us.
There wasn't any winning over. Right.
Yeah.
It's just easy to get the
Interesting. Okay.
She can handle a crisis.
She can handle a crisis, but we don't know which crisis that was. We don't have an example.
Yeah.
And
But even with her, how she answered it, it's, firm, short, kind of like,
Right.
these are your donors. I mean, again.
Yeah, especially you're a not-for-profit. You
These
gotta
are your
Kiss their
donors.
ass. You have to kiss their ass.
That's your bread and butter. I mean, so it's just, it's just interesting how she handled that. Or how she answered that question, at least. So, good. But she had a good handshake.
She
Yes.
did have a
good handshake.
Yeah, that was good.
And she did have a good closing. She had a good opening and a good closing.
Yeah.
All right, great. Hi, welcome, Linda.
Hi, Linda Kristen Mercado. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, Eva.
Eva, it's nice to meet you. Kristen Mercado.
Hi, Kristen. Beth Williams.
Nice to meet you, Beth. Kristen Mercado.
Great. Thanks for coming.
Well, thanks for having me.
We're going to kind of just dive right into this because
Okay.
we need to get going here. So you're here at Maroon Corps. It's a management trainee rotational program. Why are you interested?
Well, I think my experiences thus far, I've been in a variety of different roles, but all within the legal sector. And I think what I've found in my experiences has been that I'd like to be able to translate those skills into a corporate environment versus a legal environment. That's my background, is the legal field. And some of the things that I like about Marine Corps, I like and more specific to this management training program, is the ability to really draw on and develop understanding of all the different parts of the business. And that includes, contribution to the community and having a good, being good corporate citizens. So I think it's really great that the foundation is part of the rotation, because it's not something you always see in the typical management training programs. So.
So, despite all our efforts, sometimes things just don't go our way. And we've all been in those situations. We give it our all, but somehow things just don't come together. Tell us about a time when you gave it your all and it didn't quite come together, and what did you learn from that experience?
Sure. I think one of the growing pains that comes along with being a new lawyer is that you often don't always ask enough questions, and so sometimes you sort of set yourself up for that. And I was working on a project where we were putting together some kind of briefing materials for a client about a variety of cases that our firm was working on for them. They were all related to class action work that we were doing for the client, and I was asked by the senior partner, it was her client, to put together these binders of information and to make sure that everything was in the pieces where it should be and in a format that sort of made sense. And I put it all together and thought I had sort of thought about it in the right steps and what would make things most logical for a non-lawyer reading those materials. And when I put everything together, and I had sort of relied on the assistance of one of the paralegals, and when everything got ready to go out to the client, the partner looked through it just briefly, and things weren't in the right order, and they weren't exactly the right materials. I hadn't chosen the best examples of things to give them an understanding of what the work was. And so that wasn't my finest hour. It certainly didn't help me in looking polished and as a thorough attorney, which is something, definitely you want your lawyer to be very thorough. And I think what I learned from that was that although it was good to ask for help from the team, from the paralegal and my secretary also assisted me with it, ultimately it was my responsibility to make sure that everything came through perfectly. And although delegation is a skill that you definitely need to develop, it was also one where I probably should have taken the extra time to make sure that everything had been done perfectly because it was my project. And I think also in terms of the content part of it, to just ask more questions and not be sort of so reluctant to ask questions that to me I was afraid they would seem too simple or obvious, because it definitely would have served me better to have cleared up those uncertainties at the beginning of the project versus at the end when there wasn't much time to correct it.
So who would you have asked the questions
I think, and something that I learned to do based on this experience was when getting the initial assignment from the partner, to ask questions in the moment, but then also for those questions where I sort of wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to ask someone at the very senior level, to rely upon the people, a few years ahead of me, or even some of the younger partners who, were a little bit closer to, newer partners who were a little bit more accessible, and had gone to them and asked them questions that I wasn't 100% sure, and just to make sure that I was going on the right track, and relied upon their experience. And, oftentimes they're very happy to help you. It's just a matter of you need to be assertive and ask the right questions. So definitely that was something that I learned and did in the future.
Did you explain to the senior partner that, that you had asked the paralegal and you had asked the assistant for what their thoughts were, and this is what happened?
I explained that I worked on it in conjunction with the paralegal and my secretary, but I felt it was my responsibility not to say, hey, someone else did this, because I had to take ownership of it. I ultimately am the person responsible for the content, so I certainly didn't want to kind of be blaming someone else. So I sort of, I said these are the people that were, assisting me, but took ownership of the mistakes that I made.
So did you have an opportunity to do a similar kind of thing later? And did you do anything different?
Yes, fortunately this was someone who was, more willing to be more of a mentor than too tough on me and say, well, you got your one shot and that's it. I'm not working with you again. And she grew to become a great mentor for me. And one of the things that I learned is she was very tough, but it helped me bring my work up to another level. And in order to meet that level, I did start to rely very much on associates who were 3 or 4 years ahead of me, who had done work for her and could really kind of tell me this is the way she likes, she likes this brief written this way. She likes, sort of those little idiosyncrasies that are unique to each partner, because, when you're a young lawyer, you sort of have 5 million, you have a ton of different bosses and everybody likes it done a different way. And so I learned to take advantage of that institutional knowledge that other people had, and be less self-conscious about asking, a dumb question, because it certainly behooved me to ask questions before rather than later.
Standard interview question.
What would you describe, or what would somebody else describe as your strength and your weakness?
I think my strengths are that I'm very good at taking the initiative on things. I like to take ownership over projects, and I'm good with follow through. If I come to someone with an idea and say, I think this would be a good approach, or this is a new project that I think could be beneficial, or let's do something we have been doing for a long time, let's do it differently. And being able to take initiative on it and quickly engender a sense of trust with those people, and that they know, okay, if I give this to Kristen, she will get it done, and I don't need to babysit her. And I do like to take responsibility for a lot of different things. On a related note, on the flip side, I think one of the things that I've always continued to work on is that I think in my eagerness to be a really real asset to a team and to have responsibility for a lot of things, sometimes I do overcommit myself. And so I think I'm always trying to temper that eagerness to be involved in all aspects of a project with, some realistic time management considerations, so that not trying to do too many things and not doing any one thing at the high level that it should be done. So,
Have you ever actually experienced that situation where you've got way too many balls in the air, and how do you back out of the commitment?
Well, one of the things that I learned to do is to sort of be aware of things as soon in the process as I could. So if I knew I had two things coming up and they were both pretty big projects due, within the week or within days of each other sometimes, kind of trying to check with myself on a daily basis. Okay, how am I doing on this? Is it still realistic for me to get this done a week from the original deadline that I discussed with the person? And if it's not, trying to figure out, okay, where's the priority? I kind of understand when this has to get done, and when push came to shove, going to those people and saying, here's my situation. I had anticipated that I would have enough time to do it. I'm concerned that I won't be able to, get this in the form that is the best possible work product. Is there any flexibility? I could have it for you by this date, and always trying to suggest an alternative, or, I can't get it done by this day, and not give them some sense of when I could get it done. And there's always those times where there's always that sort of sense of, you're like, well, if I'd had just a few more days, it would have been even better, and some of that is just a perfectionistic kind of streak, but I think time management is definitely a tough skill. And again, when you're working for, a ton of different bosses, it's really hard because they don't necessarily know everything else you're doing. So, also kind of communicating to them at the start of a project, I still have this brief, due at this time. I think I should be able to have for you that date. I'll check in with you and let you know how progress is going. So it's a skill, definitely, that I don't think you ever master.
All these boxes, you don't want to piss anybody off.
Right, exactly.
Final question, because we are sort of running low on time. Favorite TV show?
Oh, I think I would have to say The Wire on HBO. About
that one.
Yeah,
Why?
it's about Baltimore, and it's interesting because each season, there are 5 seasons, and each season they looked at sort of a different. There were recurring characters all through the season, so there were police officers, there were criminals, there were politicians, and journalists, and so every season they sort of focused on a different, sociological issue. So one of the whole seasons was about youth, kind of at-risk youth, and it followed the story of these boys who were, from a rough neighborhood, minority neighborhood, where there were absent parents and things, and just sort of followed their trajectory, and the people that made it out and the people that didn't. But they were all interacting with characters from other seasons, so it was still cohesive, but it was interesting to have a treatment of a different issue in a way that was it was a really interesting program, and it was just entertaining. They were great characters, so it made me think a little bit. So it felt a little less guilty pleasure, guilty watching the TV. So.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. It was great to meet you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Would you mind just stepping out so
Yeah.
we can talk about it?
Fantastic.
Great. Thoughts, comments?
I liked her energy, enthusiasm. She looked us straight in the eye. Very firm handshake.
Yeah.
Yeah, she takes ownership.
Louder.
Oh, she takes ownership. I appreciated that. And that was kind of like a theme, I felt like, throughout the conversation. What?
Did you catch my question about whether or not she was going to throw her colleagues under the bus?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah, of course. All right. Note to self, never throw your colleagues under the bus, right?
Never talk badly about anyone.
You never talk badly about anybody. You never blame anybody else.
Right.
I don't even care if it's actually somebody else's fault. You don't say that in an interview. You take ownership. You admit to your mistakes, and you learn from it.
You learn from it, and then she gave examples of how she applied it later. It was beautiful. I mean, the way she was able to
right? She had a constant theme.
Yep.
She went back to her theme.
Right.
The only thing that I was a little bit disappointed about was just that she never, again, quite brought it back to the position or to the company. It was sort of the first question, and then, but I mean, I appreciate the fact that I think we got to know a little bit about her. There was some personality there. Certainly very, again, reliable, assertive kind of personality.
I like the fact that she talked about the potential for overcommitting and how she has learned to address that
Yes.
issue.
Yep.
Yes.
That was, to me, showed that she's learned and that she's open and she's actually taking responsibility to think it through and alert people in advance of the deadline. Very often what happens is the deadline comes up and the person hasn't given you any warning that
Right.
they're not going to meet the deadline,
Right.
and that's a problem.
Right.
Right.
So she has not only identified her weakness, but she has already thought through and came up with a solution to overcome her weakness, a
Right.
plan to overcome her weakness.
Tangible solutions.
Tangible solution, right?
And she gave examples of,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Okay, good.
It's very nice.
Well, we can invite her back, and then we can decide who we want to hire, or we can just stop there and let you guys really, well, why don't we bring her back, and we can ask the audience who they would hire. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you guys want to come on over, shift back. Actually, I think what we should probably do, if it's okay with Ken, first of all, let's give a round of applause. It's humbling experience, I think, to put yourself out there and interview for a job, whether it's fictitious or not, because it's not going to be perfect, and that people are going to literally be talking behind your back. So, again, thank you so much to the panel. Before we ask the students to vote who they thought they would hire, before we do that, let's just get a little bit of feedback from the interviewees as far as what you thought about the process, the questions, what you thought, how you thought you did yourself. Okay, so let's start with Vincent.
So on my part, I think I can rehearse a lot more with what I talked about, and this is the 2 cents that I want to leave with you guys. I think that you guys can rehearse a lot, and you can never prepare yourself. It's sort of like a negotiation kind of process. And in all negotiations, not just this, but you can always research more, you can always prepare more. There are 2 situations where you prepare. One is in general, you rehearse the different kinds of scenarios you can have, the different kind of questions you think they'll be asking. You go into like career websites, they'll give you lots of sample, generic interview questions they'll have, and also some specific ones, like what TV show are you interested in, what was the last thing you bought, and different things like that. And think about, well, if that was your case, how would you answer it? And to do that, you need to look into your past experience. You need to go through your resume and look at all of it. Is this what I have? How do I talk about it? Is this the only way I can talk about it? Or is there something else I can do to talk about it? And then the next step is to look at the interview that you actually got. Look at who the company is that gave you the interview and how those experiences apply to that company. And to do that, you need to figure out, well, what does the company want? What do they do? And a few things you can do about that is to look at the company, you look at the industry, and especially look at the job descriptions. There's a lot of time we blow it up, it's like, oh, it's just a job description, but they actually care in a lot of cases. And additionally, it's really interesting to find the other job descriptions the company has for the other job openings, and then find 2 things. One is specifically what they're looking for with you, and then the other thing is look for the big picture. What is the company positioning themselves to do by hiring you and potentially other people? And that will make you a more insightful candidate. That's all.
Excellent. Good points. Good points. Carolyn?
Well, one thing I thought was very interesting, and when you guys were clearly pushing me on what I did, I was laughing inside because that is an absolute weakness for me in interviews, is I tend to talk about what my team did, and as opposed to my own contribution to a project. So it was interesting to me there's always weaknesses, and I think that the thing about me right now is my last interview was less than a month ago. My final set of interviews for Accenture was November 6th. So, I mean, I've interviewed more recently than anyone else, probably, maybe even in this whole room, right? And the fact of the matter is, my interview was not perfect. And I know it wasn't perfect. And I've been interviewing really recently. And so I think it speaks to the practice issue. I was even a little out of practice. I felt a little rusty in this interview, even though my last interview was less than 4 weeks ago. And so that definitely speaks to just constantly working on it. And when you're sort of in interview season, say it's Metcalf time or whatnot, and you sort of have a lot of interviews going on within a short span of time, you literally need to be working on it just about every day. You have to keep yourself, it's like being in shape, really. And you have to keep yourself just constantly thinking about it, constantly improving, making sure you're not falling into traps like I did. So I think that's, for me, I was not, I mean, it was a fine interview, but it wasn't perfect. And again, my last interview was less than a month ago. So we appreciate the honesty. Because, it just shows
that you're right. It just shows that regardless if you've done 100 interviews or one interview, each interview you approach, you need to approach it as the most important interview.
Yeah.
Kristen.
So my insights, and what was the other question?
Your insights, what did you think about the interview process, the questions, how do you think you did?
I think I always struggle with, and I similarly found it here tonight, is when there's more than one person in a room. It's really always challenging for me to know when to, the person who's asked the question, should I just look at them? When do I but I want to make sure that the other people in the room feel that I'm including them in my answer.
Right.
I want to make sure I'm picking up on the nonverbal cues of what other people are doing. And I think also for me, rehearsal is a very good point. I think one of my weaknesses is that I rely a little bit too much on my conversational skills. And it's really hard to, sometimes you have someone who's great and they'll allow the conversation to sort of flow more naturally. But sometimes, and I think it was a little bit more what you saw here, where it's very kind of question, answer, and a little bit less exchange. And so for me, I sometimes have problems doing that and answering questions concisely sometimes as well. So I guess the other thing I would say is that's one of the things that I find helpful to do in an interview, and it's not always possible, particularly on preliminary round interviews, which tend to be briefer, is asking questions about the position, about what the person interviewing me does, because it also sparks for me. They'll mention something and I can say, oh, I actually did something similar, or I've had this experience. It's easier for me, at least, to sort of bring out other things from my resume than just thinking of them straight out. So some of that you can, you might, if you're that type of person as well, you can't always count on that, being in a more conversational environment. So kind of preparing some of those ahead of time can be helpful.
Want to feel included, and yet it's the person who asked the question that you should have the primary response to.
Right. Thoughts, observations, best practice. I'm trying to stay on time here. Beth and then Eva, as far as if you can give 3 takeaways before we sort of open it up to the audience, what would you advise?
Do your research. Try to be yourself. So think about a number of examples of things that you've done, situations you've been in that were challenging, things that you really enjoyed, and what was it about them that you really enjoyed? So you kind of prepare in advance. Think about specific examples. Some interviewers are really terrible, but they still need the information. So the more prepared you are with specific examples, the better off you'll both be, because they will get the information they need to be able to accurately assess whether you're the right person for the job.
Eva?
Yeah.
You had a whole list. Come on, you had a whole list of takeaways.
I've seen it all, but I guess I would just go more into the ancillary parts of getting an interview and just, when you're setting your resume, little things like, making sure that the email address you're sending it from is not offensive or just not professional,
The real life one.
like
If a real
mama, at gmail.com. Things like that, that might be your personal email, but when you're sending it to a professional setting, it just isn't good. And so, or, when someone's calling you to set up the appointment, if you don't know if you're in that interviewing season and you don't know the phone number, don't answer it. If you're asleep, on the L, things like that. Because again, that person is sitting in an office in a professional mindset, calling someone who they just woke up at 10:30. It just, just little things like that. But it does. That impression starts from the very first contact that you're sending to the organization. And I can go on and on, but yeah.
Well, I thought another one that you came up with was the Facebook example. I think that's
Facebook,
very relevant.
Again, we don't, but I know
I do. I Google people who I'm interviewing. I Google them, and if I can get on their Facebook, I'll Google and also go on images and see what kind of pictures I see.
It's all accessible these days. So it is reality.
Right.
Everybody do it. All the time do it.
Everybody does it, and if you and I advise you, if you all know who you're actually going to be interviewing with, not just the company, but sometimes, the initial screening, they'll let you know who you're interviewing. You should go and Google them too.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Because if you can make that connection, like you guys both, like you and that person, whatever, like Star Wars, that is a great, opening conversation way to connect it with somebody. Somebody actually did that with me. So we bonded over Star Wars, original movies.
But how did they say it? It's like I was stalking after you.
No. It was the way they actually brought it up. The way they actually brought it is we were talking, and I was actually looking at the resume, and there's the hobby section, and it just happened to be like they put down sci-fi. So and I like sci-fi, so I naturally picked up on that. And then because they knew about my Star Wars fixation, they actually used that as an example, and immediately like, oh my God, we completely connect, and it was a great conversation. Then it stopped being an interview and started becoming a conversation, and that's what you want. Kristen made a great mention that sometimes it can be you need to change that energy in the interview to something that you want to control that energy. You want to create that energy. You want to control that energy, and if it's a little if it's a little stiff and you don't get that flow, you got to do something. You got to let that personality shine through. Because here's the things: if there's anything that you are going to take away from this evening, please know this: you are all at the University of Chicago. As a graduate of the University of Chicago, you will be qualified. If you got that interview based on your resume, you're already qualified. Now, really, it's a matter of your personality. And this is absolutely true. For my current position, I interviewed for my current position 15 years after I graduated from the college. Okay? Went to this interview 15 years after the college, walk in there, person sits down, it's a room of actually 6 against 1. And I sit down, and the person answering the question, they all have my resume in front of them. First question, well, you're from the University of Chicago. Obviously, you're qualified. Now it's a matter of whether or not we like you. And that was the most honest statement made to me. And that's what it comes down to. It was a matter of whether or not they liked me. And I had to make all 6 of them like me in 15 minutes. And I had a typo on my resume. I was mortified. I had a typo, and I threw me off because the person sitting next to me happened to mention that he used to be an English professor. And he had a big red pen, and he circled the word principal. No. Because I used the AL rather than LE or something to that effect. And I saw that, and it was just,
just stalking me, that big red circle around the principal. But I had to get over that and actually acknowledged it because it's right there. Obviously, it was important to him. I acknowledged it, and I'm like, hey, I go, nice red pen. I go, you know what? I don't know if it's LE or AL. I mean, I try to make it a joke of it, but it's, sometimes you just kind of just need to, again, control the environment and make it yourself. Whether you're outgoing, whether you're quiet, you need to exploit those 15, 20 minutes and shine through whoever you are. Because that's who they're going to hire, and that's who they're going to spend 10, 12, 15 hours a day with. Anything else before we kind of do the head-to-toe and then the Q&A?
Well, the question for the interviewers. You brought up in the beginning that none of us here are econ majors, and we managed to find jobs. And for the people who are liberal arts, like humanities...
How many are not econ majors? Raise your hand. Awesome. Okay, there you go.
And so can you tell them how they can sell their degrees, how they can sell like critical analysis, U of C...
They're from the University of Chicago.
Or low GPA.
Talk about the core. You have taken classes
Exactly.
in every area.
And honestly, it's not going to matter in most circumstances, but sometimes we bring it out. I was talking about this before. I had an interview for a general management position with a bank in New York. This was back in October. And my degree's in anthropology, which is, my background is very non-traditional for business school, particularly here. And so, he sees my resume, and I get this a lot. They go, wow, anthropology, and you get that a lot with business school. But he wanted to talk about anthropology. So we talked about the anthropology of the financial crisis for 45 minutes. And so in that case, I had to bring in my background. Now, I haven't thought about anthropology in a long time, but most of the time it won't matter. They probably won't question it so much, but other times it can actually, you can bring something kind of cool in, something a little bit different into an interview if you have that kind of academic perspective. In a less, you're going for some sort of a business job.
And echoing that, I majored in music, and I'm currently doing economic consulting. When I interviewed with 3 people separately in separate rooms. The most senior person I interviewed with plays in a band. And we spent an entire interview talking about the demise of the music recording industry.
Right, exactly. And your personality shows that there was that connection. They hired you because on paper you looked qualified. And you need to find that connection. And I think through the way that you hear the question, you analyze the question, you answer the question, that talks a lot about your critical thinking, whether it is in the business setting or in the marketing setting. It's all about how you think and how you communicate your thought, I think.
Absolutely. That's what the University of Chicago degree does for you. Is the reputation is that you have critical thinking skills. Another reputation is that you can write. And I've been in the workforce for a long time. You can tell, right? I'm here to tell you that people in the business world don't know how to write. So if you can write,
None of my classmates can write.
if you can write, it's an incredibly important skill to have. So play that up. The fact that you can write and that you enjoy writing. I mean, that's something that is fairly unique to the University of Chicago.
Okay, so we're running a little bit on time. Before we do Q&A and before we do voting and who we're gonna vote for, there is a little section that we'd like to do called head to toe. These are the things that CAPS may not tell you, but as far as an interview and first impressions go, it is incredibly critical, right? So, do you want me to just go head to toe? All right, go head to toe. All right, literally head to toe. So you're walking an interview, right? So you take a shower, right? You take a shower. You make sure your hair is dry. Key. Make sure your hair is dry. Your hair is wet. It looks like you're unprepared. You're in a rush. You can't manage your time. Makeup for women and for men, makeup. You're not going on a date. You're not trying to pick up anybody. Conservative, light makeup, if you're comfortable with makeup, right?
Earrings, jewelry, you're not flashy, you're not, again, not trying to impress anybody. Make sure that your jewelry reflects your personality, reflects a personal setting. If you've got double earrings, take out the ring, make it single.
Bracelets, no jangling.
Yeah, no jangling. It's very, very distracting. The whole thing, and that goes with clothes too, the whole purpose of the outfit, whether for men or for women, is to present a background of professionalism. You don't want to have your clothes be distracting during the interview. Not only does that mean color, but cut. Women, no cleavage. I mean, no cleavage, okay? And if you're Asian, that may not matter, but anyway. Sorry, I had to say that. Anyway, you can have your clothes reflect a little bit about your style. What I wore today is essentially what I think would be an interview suit. It's black, it's basic, it's not white and boring, but she's got stripes on. But it shows a little bit of personality, and it's not distracting. I button it up. As far as if you're going to wear a skirt, make sure you wear hose. I actually know somebody that does interviewing at Walgreens, loved the person, but seriously questioned the judgment of not wearing hose. It's the summer, first of all, and who wears hose now? But her whole mindset was, well, if I put this person in front of my client who is very conservative, it was the hose question was a big deal. Same thing with open-toe shoes or closed-toe shoes. If you're going on an interview, err on the side of conservatism. Don't show off your toes, especially if you don't have a good pedicure. Same thing with manicures. If you've got nail polish on and it's chipped, take it off. If it's chipped, it looks like, again, you're messy, there's no attention to detail, and again, it talks about time management and priorities. I'm trying to think if there's any...
Writing on the hands. Seriously, I've seen markers.
Yeah, the other thing, you don't wear your perfume or your cologne. Don't use body spray. Anything that's going to make you smell, it might smell beautiful, but it can also be, you might interview someone who has horrible allergies or just really does not like what you think smells good. So you're better off, use your deodorant, that should be all the scenting you need.
Correct.
Again,
it's distracting. Correct.
But everything else, I'd skip it.
Don't just mute the phone, turn it off.
Yes.
Right.
I had this situation in October. I have an iPhone, so it's pretty flat, so it actually, I don't bring my purse with me to an interview because so I have my phone in the slot in my portfolio. And I had it muted, right? But it did buzz once. Now, I don't know if the interviewer heard, but he might have. I felt it because I had my hands kind of on my portfolio, and I felt it buzz, and oh, that's bad. Just turn it off.
Right.
Turn it off.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you might not think it's a big deal, but it shows it's about respect. It's about this is your priority. Nothing is more important than these 15, 20 minutes that you're spending with your interviewer. Anything else?
Wash your face. You look more alert. So sometimes you get sleepy.
Your hair.
Guys always iron your shirts, and sometimes when you need to, your pants. I know we're lazy. And also wear your belt. A lot of people forget. And always shine your shoes.
People love their shoes. Yeah,
You'd be surprised. Oh, one other thing I was mentioning, if you have a morning interview and you drink coffee or something beforehand, either bring a little travel toothbrush. I actually have, there's these little things you can buy now, and they're little toothbrushes, but you don't need water. So it's a drop in there, and you can scrub your tongue, scrub your teeth. So, I mean, I personally cannot stand it when I have to talk to someone twice in a coffee bath. So, just do a quick, go to the bathroom, do a quick swab out, make sure you don't have, you ate lunch before your interview or something.
Right. And again, this may not make or break the interview, but again, if in this tight market, why have anything that could be distracting? Why have anything that somebody can just use that as an excuse to knock you out of the box? Yeah. Right? I mean, if these are all within your own control. Yeah.
This may open up a whole new world. How about the lunch interview? There's a lot of etiquette things involved with the lunch interview.
We actually did, the Board of Governors actually did an entire workshop on the lunch interview, which fork to use, which spoon to use, don't order pasta, make sure you have stuff that's small bites, Salads are messy. If you're not sure, you always watch and look. Never take bites off of everything. Make sure that everything is bite-sized before you put it in your mouth. Never order alcohol, even though the interviewer may.
I probably wouldn't even order soda. Stick with water.
Water, iced tea.
Yeah, maybe iced tea.
Right. But that's a whole 30 minutes in itself. Yeah.
So going back to, if you have coffee in the morning, don't bring it in.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
someone like with their big old big slurp in the way, really, just. Wow. Where do you work?
Okay. Raise your hand if you would have.
Should we leave the room?
No, we're not going to say why. I would like to get some comments and feedback as far as questions go. But raise your hand if you would have hired Vincent. Okay. Raise your hand if you would have hired Carolyn. Okay. And raise your hand if you would have hired Kristen. Okay. Huh? Questions, thoughts, comments? Yes.
Is that about body language during an interview?
I'm sorry?
Body language?
Yes. Yes, important. Body language. I could start. You guys can. It's open up to the panel. Body language. How would you? Are you talking about what kind of body language you should portray or you should watch?
Different body language.
Yes. What did you observe from their body language?
She always had her hands like on her thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was always kind of like slouched back, and she was very
You swiveled a little
I
bit.
was actually just going to say that I tend to lean, because I do kind of like think of it as a conversation. I think that is my thing, and I do gesture a lot when I speak, and you have to kind of, so if you know you're kind of, sometimes if you need to like lock your fingers, or, if you play with your watch, and so like sometimes just maybe take it off so you don't.
Right. And that comes with the practice. That comes with practicing in the interviewing, making sure you get honest feedback, and practicing in front of the mirror if you need to. Know what your body language portrays. But again, I think it's about controlling the environment, controlling the interview so your personality shows through. I mean, I actually didn't notice Vincent slouching. I noticed that he was sitting back a little bit, but that also gelled with his personality and how he was answering the questions in a very personal way. So it wasn't distracting, but it kind of gelled with the whole atmosphere that was going on. As far as observation of Carolyn, I think, by her having that kind of firm, more formal presence, that also very much reflected, I think, her personality and her approach in the interview as far as being reliable. Here she is, she's firm, she's steady, she's ready to go, kind of thing.
If you're going to leaning forward demonstrates that you're interested in the other people in the room. So if you lean toward them, that's considered a positive. If you're leaning back with your arms folded, you're closing them off.
Right.
So you're better off having your hands, stable or in your lap, not fidgeting. But if you're going to lean forward to show that you're interested.
Right. And then for the women, you also, if there's no table, and it's just, sometimes you're interviewing without a table and it's a chair. I mean, you do, just for men too, you want to make sure how you're holding your legs, whether they're relaxed, they're crossed, sometimes crossed a little bit, or you keep them straight together. I mean, again, it is, you're right, body language sometimes is a very, very large part. It's a conversation. It's a whole silent conversation that's going on. So definitely.
Eye contact
Yes.
is important. In this culture, it's important.
Smiles are also very helpful.
Smiling. Yes. Yes. Definitely. Yes.
What about hand gesturing? I noticed that some people are very just kind of hands on arms, some of them are motion that people.
Okay, the question is about hand gesturing. Yes, no, maybe.
I'll say that when my hand gestures are very large, I try to keep them here. I'm gonna hand gesture. I know it's gonna happen, and if I obsess about keeping my hand still, then I'm not thinking about the interview, that's bad. So I don't like to obsess. I can't obsess about it because it's just gonna happen. I'm doing it right now. I try to keep it in front of my body. Right, like I try to keep it here, but I'm gonna do it. So there's no. It's who you are. Yeah.
It's who you are. So if you are a very expressive person and you talk with your hands, then you should talk with your hands in the interview because that's who you are. But you may not want to do this kind of thing, or you might knock someone in the head. So just modifying your gestures a little bit might be all you need.
And I think it goes to the whole point of distraction. I talk very animated as well. I pay attention to the person I'm speaking with. If all of a sudden I see that they're glancing away from my face towards one of my hands, that's a signal to me to bring it in. And sometimes what I'll do is I will actually sit on my hand and just try to talk with more.
It's why I keep my hands sort of in the space of my portfolio quite a bit, because it's more or less the width of my torso. So if I can kind of keep on the portfolio, within the portfolio, and then I'm in the right space.
So as you can see, we all have different personalities and different styles, and it's very subtle, so it's hard to have a generalized rule, because what works for one person might be a disaster for somebody else. In the beginning, they were talking about how their interview workshops at CAPS, and you all should go.
And I'll be honest. I mean, you want the job because you need a job, and you're obviously interviewing for it. But if the culture of the company is such that you're a very expressive person, and the people that work there aren't, you might not actually want that job in the end of the day. If they don't want you, it might be a sign that you might not want them either. And so that's kind of okay. At the end of the day, that's really okay. Even a lot of companies that are really similar seeming, look at every single consulting firm. And you can look at them and be like, they're all the same. They're really not once you get down to it. And so that the culture of the company becomes important, and the kind of people you find there. And if you're not like them, you probably don't want to be there. And sometimes that comes across in the interview. I've definitely, even just that one person in the interview you go, oh God, he's so like everybody else at this company, I can't stand. And you just know that it's not working, and it's like, okay, this is not going to work. It's okay. It's good. Let's just get it.
Yeah, if you're interviewing inside the company and you have the chance to walk through the halls or, in between, observe how people interact with each other. Are all the office doors shut? Are people, do people say hello to one another? Do the lower level people, do people say hello to the secretaries, even though they're the highest level person, and vice versa? I mean, those are things that are important, and you should model those things too. I mean, you should err on the side of treating everyone like they're the president of the company.
That is very important.
Because trust me,
can you expand on that as far as treating even you walk in the door, the receptionist, all the way to
right. You should act like your interview starts the second you walk in the building. So every single person you meet, you should speak clearly, look them in the eye, be polite, thank them. If they ask you how you are, ask them how they are. Just really, it's simple things, but trust me, there are often times, a lot of times in particular, I knew this was true in law firms, because often the support staff, they all know each other, and if you get a bad reputation with one person, you're done. And you need those people. And it's important to see, are other people being, do people respect each other regardless of where they are in their position? And you should absolutely, it doesn't matter what level of position you come in, you are going to need to learn a lot from everyone around you. So you should, treat everyone with respect, and regardless of whether it's the male guy or whoever that person is, you should always be respectful and, kind to them, because it's important, and I think it speaks a lot to the culture of an environment if you don't see that.
So that's it, that you should also be professional outside of the building, for at least 1 or 2 blocks.
Yeah,
absolutely. You don't know who you're walking down the sidewalk.
you're riding the elevator with.
It puts you in a mindset.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Eva has a great example, the Disney example.
I don't know if this is urban legend or what, but someone once told me this. But supposedly at Disney, they once did it, they do now. But on the way to HR down the hall, there's purposely a mop or a broom that's pushed over on the ground. So that's your first test. Do you step over it? Do you kick it? Do you pick it up? The right answer is picking it up. but again, it's those subtle things. But again, just telling the person.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
So I noticed that you asked the fantastic or your weaknesses, and something really interesting, and also I think really for people who are in film, that's like how would you improve on that? I'm just wondering, do you guys think it's like, there's somewhere where I think a lot of people who just dig themselves a very big hole. I don't know if you see this or experience like people who just get, star weaknesses and never bring that to the positive thing.
I've done that kind of interviews that were like that. Oh, yeah, bad. Those you have to have written down. I didn't actually look at my list. I should have looked at my list prior to sitting down for my interview today. Those you write down, and those you run by several friends, and you know exactly what, and you have at least 3. Try for 5, because some of them will push you for more than 3, and they do that because they know you've prepped 3.
That's true.
Interviewers are tricky people. That is absolutely true. And that's happened to a friend of mine, where she had to come up with 5 strengths.
Right. And you heard the messaging from the feedback is you come up, you succinctly articulate what the strength and weakness is. You give an example of that. And then you, especially with the weakness, you always turn it around to a positive. How did you learn from that? How would you apply it to this position? You always bring it back. Most interviews will not throw you that softball. You have to take the initiative and answer the next question or answer the question that's not being asked, but you know that's the purpose of the conversation.
So there's a very simple model that you can follow for interview questions when you're thinking about your responses, and it's called the SHARE model. The S stands for situation. What's the situation you were faced with? H is for hindrance. What was getting in the way of your being able to act on it? The A is for actions. What actions did you take? The R is results. What were the results of the situation? And the E is education, or what did you learn from it? And the E sometimes is the most important thing in an interview, because we all make mistakes. But some of us make the same mistake over and over and over again. That's not what an employer wants. So if you've learned something valuable and now you're applying that learning to current situations, that's the ideal situation. Everyone wants a continuous learner.
Any other questions? Yes. We'll take 2 more, and then we've got to close out.
During some of the interviews, some of the interviewers were saying that answer seems to rehearse. But then, I guess some of the interviewees said that you have to practice and rehearse ahead of time. So where do you strike the balance between rehearsing and yet not coming off as too rehearsed?
That's exactly how you strike the balance. You rehearse it, but make it sound like a conversation.
I would say err on the side of rehearsing.
Yeah.
Do not fall into the trap of, I want to do this on the fly so that it sounds like it's on the fly. I think that's a really bad idea. The interviewer knows, hopefully, that you're prepping for this. So if it sounds a little bit more rehearsed than unrehearsed, err on the side of rehearsed.
One way you can sort of fake it is after the question is asked, sort of maybe wait a beat as though you were thinking about it in the moment. You should always do that anyway.
You should always, right.
And listen to the question, and you're giving a considerate answer, you're being thoughtful. But it could definitely help with those kind of like standard questions, so it seems like, if you really feel like I really need some way to segue, you can say, that's a great question, or, whatever you need to do. There's sort of those filler things you can do if maybe your rehearsed thing flies out of your head. And you need a second, a beat to get it back.
With a hand gesture might even come it a little bit. If you're talking about it, I mean, I could tell a story that I've literally rehearsed in policy and just say, sit here and tell your story. If I'm actually having a conversation here, if I'm actually having a conversation with you, I'm going to use my hands. I'm going to, lean forward, back, turn a bit, look down for a second, look up. I mean, you're going to talk like a normal person.
So I think the message here is absolutely prepare, over prepare. But when you're actually in the interview, you need to live in the moment. You need to have that conversation. Because if you're in an interview season, you may have the same question asked you 100 times. But each time, you have to treat that interview as the most important interview. And you have to live in that moment. And you have to tell the prepared answer in an honest way. And however that is, whether it's by hand gesture, whether it's by body language, whether it's by pausing, but you just have to always live that question uniquely. Every time it's asked that. Every time you're asked that question. That's what I think. If you're asked a question that you haven't prepared for, it's okay to be quiet for a moment while you're thinking. You can even say, well, that's an interesting question. Give me just a moment to think about that. Some interviewers who are really skilled will say, if you really can't think of an example, that's okay, we can come back to it later. And very often, 2 or 3 minutes later, an answer will pop into your head. And you can then say, it just occurred to me that the question you asked a couple of minutes ago, I should have considered. And then you can go back. That's perfectly fine. Well, be comfortable with the silence. Out of the 3, how many of you were prepared for the what's your favorite TV show question? Have you ever been asked that question?
Yes, that one I've been asked what else I want to do.
No, I've never been asked a TV show.
Right.
Someone
So it
asked me
happens.
what was the what book did you read most recently?
What's your guilty pleasure? Pleasures?
Right.
You've been asked that.
Don't be too honest. Okay, one more question and then we've got to wrap up. Somebody had their hand. Go ahead.
Right. Okay.
Figure out how you're going to relate them to the job. Figure it out beforehand.
So just for the video, just to reiterate the question.
The question was that if you're in an interview situation and they are literally asking you an
Open-ended question of explain your resume, where do you go? And so
I think you relate it to you craft the story in a way that you can relate it to the job as best you know the job. From the description and that sort of thing. The best you know the company. So, yeah.
So, for example, what's most pertinent for the end of your resume? So start there. Start with the stuff that would you mean that you may start on a different part of your resume depending on what the job is? So you may be asked that question by 5 different people, by 5 different companies, and your starting point in your resume may be different each and every time. The important part, again, is preparation. Know your resume. Know every single line in your resume. Have a story. Have an explanation of every single line of your resume, a particular job. You may actually want to go through the strengths, weaknesses, mistakes, education process
for each and
every job that you have. And make sure you get concrete examples. Because
your resume is, like you say, could be a starting ground for an entire 20-minute conversation. And again, you want to control that 20 minutes of that time. So the best way to do it, welcome that open-ended question, because boom, you can start talking about your strength and how that strength applies to that job. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the panelists. If we can give everybody another round of applause.